He's the co-host of FanDuel TV's Run It Back, and he is the senior lead NBA insider. Everybody knows his work. It's Shams Charania, and it's good to do this, man. We've never done this, so I'm fired up.
I'm excited to do it. It was good seeing you in Chicago when we were back there covering the combine. So yeah, debut episode.
Okay, so we got to start with the Kyrie stuff. You reported yesterday that he'd reach out to LeBron, maybe not about the Lakers' destination, but if he would potentially go back to Dallas. It would be really hard, all the moving parts. So, this league, I like to remind myself all the time when I see something like that can't work. And be like, all right, well, there's very few things that are impossible. But what's the deal with this story and Kyrie's motivation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think you look at it from a broader perspective, and I look at it as this is a guy, Kyrie Irving, that's going into unrestricted free agency coming up here in July 1. He's going to be a free agent. I think what this is showing that clearly he's out there putting his recruiting cap on. I think he's trying to go get talent to come to Dallas potentially, and I think him seeking that out with LeBron James. And the last 2 years, the entire conversation has been about Kyrie Irving going to the Lakers, teaming up with LeBron, Anthony Davis in LA. But now you kind of flip that script. And I think what this shows is I think Kyrie Irving, before he makes his decision, I think to go back to Dallas, and as he's going through this decision over the next month plus, and as it goes into June 30th and July 1, when free agents can, sign contracts or agree to contracts, I think him and Luka Doncic both want this Mavericks team to get better. And to me, LeBron James obviously represents the epitome of that. Like if you can get a guy like that, I mean, that's the top. I mean, that's a white whale. That's the guy that, I mean, if you're really trying to go get a guy that after the season made some comments that at least opened the door toward his playing feature being in question. But yeah, he's reached out to LeBron. From what I'm told, he's made contact with him. They've had a back and forth now for a couple years. Now, do I think it's unlikely LeBron James goes to Dallas? I do. I think he's happy in LA. I think he's happy being there, being a Laker, and his son, Bronny James, going to USC next year. So there's a lot of reasons why staying in LA makes the most sense for LeBron James. But I'm curious, going into this offseason, how do the Lakers handle it? How do they handle potentially lessening his workload going into year 21, age 39? Do they try to go get a guy like Kyrie Irving, Fred VanVleet? Those are two top point guards in the open market. And how does this impact Kyrie Irving's free agency? Can that Mavericks team get better?
Yeah, if we start with the James part of it, he did the 2-year extension last year. That's $97 million. So if you look at some of the mechanisms, like he could get real vocal about it and say, you need to do this. But then when you look at the remaining package around what would be Kyrie and Luka, there's not, like, I like Josh Green. I don't know that I like him that much. And I think you brought up a really good point too, is, who knows how the LA fan base would treat it. But I think LeBron likes to historically be able to go back and say, I never forced my way out. I left as a free agent. I don't think this is the city with all of his interests that they've done a really good job of cultivating all the stuff off the court. I don't think it's the kind of city where you want to piss it off, even though maybe they would get over it or something like that. So there doesn't seem to be a lot of reason, unless you thought that Dallas with Luka, with Kyrie, and then trying to salvage whatever they could with the new CBA moving forward for the pieces around him, which would be really, really challenging, because I don't even think that guarantees you some top spot in the West with all of it. So that part of it for granted, it's a really interesting story, but the motivation behind that for LeBron, like a lot would have to change, and he'd have to get to a point that I think he's very proud that he hasn't gotten to in the past by forcing his way out the ways other guys have. I do think that's actually important to him.
Yeah, and I think there are a couple here mindsets that are similar, right? Like Kyrie Irving, clearly there's a desire, and I think the Mavericks and Mark Cuban, Nico Harrison, they all share that. They want to improve that team. They don't have many mechanisms to do it because of the salary cap and second apron. So they're going to be really moving on a tight rope. And the Lakers, similarly, they get to the Western Conference Finals. Rob Pelinka, that front office, I thought they made some shrewd moves at the deadline, going and getting Rui Hachimura, D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt. They got players, they got bodies in there that can help them win. But now, how do you take that next step, right? I think LeBron James even said it, like he's at a stage of his career where he's playing for championships. He's playing for NBA Finals runs. And the Western Conference Finals, I think, was amazing for him in this organization. But I think, how can you take that next step? And D'Angelo Russell getting benched in that game 4, that's probably the easiest position you can look at. Maybe backup big as well. Mo Bamba didn't play down the stretch. So the Lakers have some question marks. How do they improve the team? Do you run it back? Because there is also, I think, a thought out there that D'Angelo Russell, bringing him back might be your best bet. So both teams are going to have to walk a tightrope and get creative to make their teams better.
Okay, last thing on this piece, and because you've been on top of a lot of the Kyrie stuff, and if you go back to like even the bubble, Durant wasn't healthy. It didn't seem like he wanted to play. Some of the conversation got really weird about him even suggesting that he would want to start his own league, which I'd heard about from like a bunch of different people. Obviously, there was a little tougher to pull that off. But then, look, I could say, well, he's actually worried about his money more now than maybe he would like you think, but at the same time, like he lost a lot of money by not getting vaccinated. So maybe it's not always that. But then I remember specifically last summer, there seemed to be some momentum and you were talking about whether or not he could opt out and take the mid-level to end up in LA. And I thought that felt a little bit like leverage for the Nets. And then ultimately it was like, you know what? I actually don't want to lose $30 million this year. I'm gonna take my player option and I'll figure this out. So I think he is capable of a lot of different things, but I always wonder how much of this is like realistic with him, and that he's probably looking at making up some of the money he did lose through all the COVID stuff, where it's like, all right, I can say I want all these things. And I'm sure he and LeBron have been flirting with each other now for a couple of years. It just still feels like Dallas is the only thing that makes sense, and that maybe part of this is leverage and hoping he gets the full 4 years. Because that's usually normally that's what I would always default to for with every player. I'd be like, this is what he's doing. He just wants to.
Well, I don't know how much leverage he needs, though, right? Like, I think Dallas is in a position now where they gave up 2 starters, Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie. They gave up a first-round pick. They gave up multiple second-round picks. So I think if Kyrie somehow walks, like let's say he does, let's say he went to the Lakers on the taxpayer mid-level exception, or he went to whatever team for the mid-level exception and took a pay cut, took like a $30 million, $25 million pay cut. I mean, Dallas would be in a position where they have no way to get that salary slot. They really don't have a way to get, improve their team. And that's what puts them in a position where they have to really retain Kyrie Irving. And I think that everything I've heard in the last several weeks, ever since they made the trade for Kyrie Irving, their number one priority, they understand it from a salary perspective, from a team building perspective, is bringing back Kyrie Irving. Now it's we'll see over the next month or so when free agency starts, what numbers do they look at? It's going to be max. What is it going to look like? How many years? Player option, all that. And I think that's stuff that they got to sort through. But I think it seems the first priority is how can we make this team better? The Mavericks. How can they actually put themselves in a position to where, yes, if Kyrie Irving resigns, this is a team that's going to have talent around them. And I think that's the big question.